Thank you, Aaron. It's a pleasure to be here, and I've been very fortunate in my career. And Aaron mentioned I was the 15th one certified by the NSCA. There's no special thing there other than it shows my age. But it's truly an honor to be here, primarily to share the platform with some great strength coaches, and also to be able to be here to share some insight with you. I've been at the high school level, the collegiate level, and the professional level, so I've walked in all three shoes. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to get something from the presentation. The presentation is called the 5 Ps of Strength and Conditioning. For years and years, I used to have 4 Ps. I've recently added one, and you'll see that as we go through the presentation. You may want to take out a notepad right now and some pencil. I'm going to begin with this statement, and it's a big one. The purpose of strength training, you got this? The purpose of strength training is to get somebody stronger. All right, now obviously an overstatement of the obvious, isn't it? But a lot of times what isn't an overstatement of the obvious is the manner in which you train. Coach Bayless talked about it's not what we do. It's not what equipment, what protocols, what we do. It's how we do it. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. When people talk about philosophy to me, that's one of the biggest questions I get is what is your philosophy on strength training? I've got news for you. Strength training is not philosophy, it's physiology. It's physics. It's motor learning. It's psychology. There's no philosophy there. Philosophy comes from how you deal with, on a human relation, with the people that you're training. Then we're talking philosophy. But when we're talking strength training, we're talking about developing strength, but the way you do it is in a way that is prudent, that is productive, that is practical, that is purposeful, and player-friendly. Now let's take a look at training that is prudent. When you're talking about strength training somebody prudently, there are 2 questions you have to ask yourself. And these are some of the things that I've seen recently out in the field. Is when you look and evaluate this type of training, the first thing you have to ask yourself is it safe? Is it safe? Is it orthopedically sound? Okay? I'm a healthcare provider. At the top of that food chain are medical doctors. Okay, granted, a dumbbell coach is down here on the food chain of healthcare providers. But at the top of the chain, when a doctor gets his licensure, he takes an oath. And in that oath, the 3rd tenet of the Hippocratic Oath is primum non nucre. Does anybody know what that means? First, do no harm. First, do no harm. Okay, and that's what doctors do. Now, when doctors prescribe drugs, when they prescribe drugs to somebody, or they prescribe surgery, what they are doing is they are asking themselves this question: what is the physiological effect from that drug? Okay? Well, when I prescribe exercise, that's got to be my same question. What is the physiological effect that I'm expecting from prescribing this particular thing? Now, take a look at some of these examples. A lot of times when I show these, people will laugh and stuff like that, but within the context of how this was presented in these magazines, this is a very serious way to train people. This is Val. She's doing upside-down medicine ball push-ups for strength and balance. The first thing I'm asking myself is that safe? Is there a safer way to valve to train her shoulders? I've got 2 daughters. If a coach puts my daughter in this situation, I'm going to have a problem with that. That's not safe. Okay? I don't know how many of you have heard what's going on in Jacksonville right now. The closest YMCA to me, there was a guy that was doing this lift on a ball like this at 65 pounds. The ball burst and he fractured both his arms. It's big news up in Jacksonville right now because they're in litigation right now. And since that time, and it took 2 broken arms to do it, the YMCAs have taken all the physio balls out of their gyms. Thinking to myself, well, is there a safer way to do that? Now think about this. And the attorney doesn't really have to be that bright. He can put the guy in the stand and say, okay, listen, why would you put somebody in this position? Well, he may say something like, well, you see, it's functional because, in the real life situation, we're never really in balance. And if a guy has to stabilize and balance and function and stuff like that, it will transfer then to normal life a lot better. It's more applicable to more real world living. Well, the attorney say, okay, that sounds like there's some rationale there. The next question he's going to say is this: give me the supporting evidence. And then the guy's nailed because there is no supporting evidence for that. Okay? So, again, what is the physiological effect of that exercise? Now, having said that, one of the reasons why I love this profession is because I know your heart. I mean, you wouldn't be in this profession if you didn't want to help people. I know that. And, a lot of times I like to take people out of their comfort zone with exercise. It's not to offend you. It's so you can take a critical look at your protocols and practices, evaluate them, and see if that's the best way to do things. We owe it to ourselves as professionals to do that on a frequent basis. And some people get mad. And that's okay. That's okay if it stimulates thinking, if it stimulates you to take a critical look at what you're doing with your kids or your patients or whatever population you're training. Because in the end, they get better service, don't they? Okay? But I know your heart. I mean, Ronnie's talking about getting into work at 5 a.m. in the morning. Do you think he does that because he doesn't care about those kids? Matt's there till 8:30. You don't think he's there because he doesn't care about his kids? No, I'm saying, yeah, the people that prescribe this exercise, they're not malicious. They're well-intended. When you prescribe exercise to somebody, just like when a physician prescribes drugs, you have to ask yourself the question, what is the physiological effect for that exercise? Okay? And again, like I say, because we don't do that, it doesn't strike at the heart of people. They're well intended, but let's get some education on this. Now, there is a thought out in our field right now that to be fast, you have to train fast. Now again, that has some rationale, doesn't it? How many people have heard the dictum that a little information hurts more than helps? Okay? Unfortunately, when it comes to coaching, that's a big reality. Coaches know things like fast twitch and slow twitch. Okay? The problem is that's all they know. They know those terms, fast twitch and slow twitch. And then they make inferences. And usually the inference in regards to fast twitch and slow twitch is this. Fast twitch means that if I've got a fast twitch athlete, that means that they move fast. Slow twitch are probably Boston marathoners. They move slow. Do you know what fast and slow twitch refer to? It doesn't have to do to rate of contraction speed of the muscle cell. It has to do with their fatigability. There are fast fatiguing fibers and slow fatiguing fibers. See, that's the greater reality. Another point when we're talking about fast and slow twitch fibers, think about this. What is the difference in contraction speed between a fast twitch fiber and a slow twitch fiber? What's the difference in contraction speed between the two? Does anybody know? Physiology 101. You know what it is? 60. Now listen to me. I'm not talking seconds. I'm talking millionths of a second. The only difference in contraction speed between a fast and slow twitch fibers is 60 milliseconds. There is no difference. Certainly when it comes to human movement, there's no difference. So again, those are the greater realities that people, they make some assumptions based on the little information they know, but they don't know the greater realities. People are well-intended, they're not well-educated. So when you say stuff like, well, to be fast, you have to train fast, there's kind of some semblance of rationale there. Okay? Now, I made a big mistake. I didn't bring my computer down, so all the film that I have isn't on the flash drive, so you're not going to see this. This was just an example of somebody doing a power clean, but we know what that is. Because a lot of times the power clean is prescribed for the physiological effect of getting more powerful, to be faster. Okay? Well, let's take a look at that. Ballistic training claims. Okay, this was by Don Chu, former president of the National Strength and Conditioning Coaches Association and father of plyometrics. In his book, Don Chu says that the reason why you train people ballistically, in other words, you train them very fast, is because it increases the excitability of the neuromuscular system. Okay, so the physiological effect here is to increase the excitability of the neuromuscular system. Who wants to try to tell me how you're going to measure the excitability of the neuromuscular system? See, it's kind of a gray area, isn't it? What is he saying? What does it mean? It's undefined. You don't know what it means. You think this is going to stand up in court when somebody gets hurt and he says, well, I was trying to increase the excitability of the neuromuscular system. Okay, fine. How are you going to do that? Define it. What is the excitability of the neuromuscular system? What is it? And then give me the supporting literature. Now, the National Strength Coaches Association, their position paper on explosive training says this. The reason why you do ballistic activity is because it simulates movement patterns and velocity and acceleration patterns of many sport movements. Anybody want to try to define it? Tell me what you got out of there. There's a lot of words, but what's the substance? I think there's some inferences that are made. Okay, one inference is they're talking about movement patterns. It simulates movement patterns. I think the inference there is doing a power clean or Olympic movement simulates athletic movements in many sports. I think the terminology a lot of people are talking about now is the triple extension. Have you heard of that? And stuff like that. Okay. So it infers that if you do that lift, it's an athletic lift for athletic movements, so you will be training athletes, you'll improve athletic movement by doing that. Well, again, is that true? This is a great film, but we're not going to be able to see it today, but I'm going to try to explain what's on here. First thing we need to do is let's define specific. Okay, what does specific mean? Because it's very important. Specific means, look at it, it means exact, precise, identical. It does not mean almost like or similar to. It's exact. And the reason why I get passionate about that is because motor learning experts will tell you this. Either you're doing a skill or you're not. Any alteration in movement or load or speed, it's a different neuromuscular firing pattern. So the only way you get a running back better at being a running back is he's got to do running back stuff. 3 years ago, well, I think it's 5 years ago right now, I had a guy, a salesman in my weight room trying to sell me heavy footballs. Okay, Byron Leftwich was our quarterback at the time. And he was saying that having Byron throw heavy footballs all summer is not only going to increase the strength of his throwing muscles, it's going to increase throwing skill as well. Is he right?
No, because it's going to change when you're throwing a lighter ball.
Exactly. Exactly. Because of the loaded implement, you're going to have to change your mechanics to compensate for that. Okay? So what he's going to do is he'll become a better heavy football thrower. He picks up a regulation football, and that's a whole new skill. Did you know? And the guy that if you want to get good motor learning research, Google the name Brent Rushall. Brent Rushall. He's one of the world's leading motor learning experts. He started in Australia. He's now at the University of California, San Diego.
Forget the spelling on that, Coach.
Ruschell. Brent Rushall. And he's got a couple books out. But he's done studies, and he's come out and said that if Byron was throwing a hit, he said mainly elite athletes. But do you know that if you do something so similar to the activity, you could screw them up? So not only is it not productive to do it, but you can make them worse. Okay? So again, when you're talking about sports specificity, I like to talk in these terms. What do we do in the weight room? Are we holding practice? What we're doing in the weight room is we're training muscles. What we do in the sport venue is train movement. Okay? Okay? That's specific. That's specific. Okay? Hey, let's take it to the absurd. If I could hold football practice in my weight room, and in fact there was a carryover, why have football practice? Why? Okay, we're getting better athletes, better football players by doing our weight room stuff. Okay? But you carry out that rationale to the absurd, and that's what you're saying. The practical application is this. Skills are specific. They are not similar to or almost like. There is no positive transfer of skills from the weight room to the sports venue. Did you know that motor learning experts put skill on a continuum? At one end of the continuum, they have what's called closed loop skills. Closed loop skills would be like lifting, doing a bench. When you do a closed loop skill, it's in a stable environment. The person doing the skill initiates the exercise and terminates the exercise at will. He doesn't have to process any afferent information coming in to do the skill. He just does the skill. Weightlifting, a bench press would be a closed loop skill. Now at the other end of the continuum, there are open loop skills. An open loop skill would be like what an offensive lineman does when he's doing pass pro. Okay? He has to now process information. Is he taking an inside charge? Is he bull rushing? Is he taking an outside? And based on what he's seen in front of him and processing that information, then he reacts to that. Open loop skill. Did you know that a basic fundamental concept in motor learning is, listen to me, closed loop skills have no positive transfer onto open loop skills. Did you hear that? Now what's amazing is you go in to talk to a lot of these PhD motor learning experts at the college level, and you tell them some of the stuff that's being done in the weight room. You know what reaction I get? They're not doing that. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. And not only are they doing it, it is mainstream training. Because for every one of me that's going to tell you, you don't have to do that stuff to improve football skills, there's 100 others that are going to tell you he's wrong. Okay? But skills are specific. Either you're doing the skill or you're not doing the skill. What's the physiological effect? Okay, let's go into some physiology 101 here. If you really want to know what's going to increase the contraction speed of a muscle cell, there are 4 things. You can look it up. Here's the source right here. Physiology of Exercise Response and Adaptations by Dr. David Lamb from The Ohio State University. Okay? There are 4 things that go into speed of movement, how fast a muscle fiber can contract. The first thing is this, degree of myosin ATPase. It's an enzyme within the muscle. If you have more of it and a higher quality of myosin ATPase, I got news for you. The cell will contract faster. Okay? The next thing, the degree of sarcoplasmic reticulum development. Basically, we're talking about the structure of the cell. And if the cell is more highly structured, you know what? It contracts faster. Okay? The third thing has to do with troponin's affinity for calcium. Troponin is one of the contractile elements within the muscle. If it's more sensitive to calcium, do you see calcium turns on a muscle cell? Okay, calcium shot in there, troponin releases its site, myosin binds with actin, and all of a sudden we've got muscle contraction. Well, troponin's kind of the doorway there, and if they open the doorway up faster because they're more sensitive to calcium, I got news for you, the cell contracts faster. Okay? And the last thing has to do with the nerves that innervate the fibers. Think about this. Think about the size of the cords that are coming out of your lamps at home versus the size of the cords that come out of your refrigerator. The diameters are a little different, aren't they? And the reason is because they carry different electrical voltages. Fast twitch fibers do in fact have larger diameters of nerves that innervate them, and because of the higher electrical voltage, they contract faster. You know how much faster? 60 milliseconds faster. Okay? So, let's kind of go back. When I get in discussions with other strength coaches and stuff like coaches about what they do, and they say, well, you know, we do a lot of the ballistic stuff, you know, and okay, well, first thing you have to ask yourself is, what is the physiological effect for prescribing that exercise? Okay, so I'm asking the high school coach, I say, well, are you trying to increase myosin ATPase level? Are you trying to increase sarcoplasmic reticulum development? By doing that, are you trying to increase troponin's affinity for calcium? Or are you trying to increase the neural innervation, the diameter of the nerve that innervates the fiber? By the time I get done saying that, he's looking at me like I got 9 heads. The heck are you talking about? Hey, the only way you're going to make a muscle cell faster is to affect one of those 4 things. So by doing a ballistic thing, which you're saying is going to increase power, you have to affect one of those 4 things. At least if a coach tells me I'm doing it because I'm trying to increase myosin ATPase levels. Well, God bless you. At least you got a reason for doing it. At least there's a physiological reason for doing what you're doing. But my next question is this. Give me the supporting literature. Give me the supporting literature that shows me that if I throw weights in the weight room, I'm going to increase myosin ATPase stores. Well, I got news for you. There's none out there right now. Okay? I like to do this at football clinics because, again, what I hear most often is when ballistic exercise is prescribed, the reason for prescribing that is it develops explosion. Well, you're not going to see it today, unfortunately, but I got tape of NFL football games, 3 games. And I'll show this tape, and I'll say, if training ballistically is so significant, you know what? It better show up on film. Right? It better show up on film. Okay, so I got 2 teams, 2 NFL teams. One I know trains ballistically, and the other team does not train ballistically. And you tell me by watching that film, you're going to be able to tell me which team trains ballistically and what doesn't? Well, you can't tell. So what's my point? If it is so significant and it's not showing up on film, why do you do it? What's your reasoning? Okay? Does it make a difference? Well, on Sundays for us, it didn't. I know when we were down in Tampa, the years I was here with Tony, is people said we had the most explosive defense in all football at that time, and I would agree with most people. Well, we didn't do any ballistic training. Okay? I got news for you. The reason why we were so explosive, look at this research. They determine what are the most important elements of why somebody's explosive. The biggest thing is a player's will. What's inside him? Does he want to make the play? Okay? I got news for you. Check this out. Improvement in technique is the major determinant in power development. Did you hear that? It's not throwing weights in the weight room. It's improving your technique. That's what's going to show up on the field. Let me use an analogy. We'll use my golf game, or lack thereof, as an example. I've been a dumbbell guy for 25 years, so I've got above levels of strength in my body, okay? But when I get up on the tee box, I don't golf. And I have no mechanics. So I have strength, but I have no mechanics. I'm not powerful. But when I retire and I have time to get lessons, and I can now learn to marry my strength with my skill, now I'm going to have power. Improvement in technique is the major determinant of power development. You know what? I'm a strength coach. I'm not a position coach. And the problem is, in the field, there is a lot of strength coaches that are wannabe position coaches. They want to coach practice in the weight room. Okay? I got news for you. The other thing that's going to show up on Sunday or on Friday or Saturday is, are your kids smart? Are your kids smart? 3 years ago, we had a kid from Oklahoma, outside linebacker, 245, comes in, and coaches called him a high rep guy, which basically means he's not real smart. He needs a lot of reps for him to pick up things. That's why he wasn't drafted. And when the rookies would come in, I would sit down with them and give an weight room orientation. And one of the first things I said is, I know you come from a lot of different backgrounds, but you're a Jaguar now. And just how you're going to have to make adjustments as far as whether you play offense or defense, well, you may have to make some adjustments in the weight room as well. And one thing we don't do in the weight room is we don't do any Olympic lifts. 99% of the guys would go, I like doing that stuff anyway. Okay? But there were 1% of those guys every year that would meet me after I got done with the orientation and say, Coach, I got to do, that's what got me to the dance. I got to do it. He is sentimentally tied into that. So what I would do with that player is I'd take him in my office, and you're going to see what I'm going to show him here in a minute. And I would show him how orthopedically dangerous the exercise was. Okay? And even after that presentation, this kid from Oklahoma said, no, Coach, I understand what you're trying to say. I'm saying it's going to be a career killer for you. I understand that, but that's what got me here. I got to do it. Well, I'm not one of these my way or the highway kind of guys. I'm thinking to myself that if he goes out on the field, he was an outside linebacker. If he goes out on the field, opening game, and in the back of his mind he's saying, that jerk wouldn't let me do that, and I'm not prepared now. Is it going to be reflected in his performance? Absolutely. So what I would do with guys like that is I'd have them sign a waiver saying I was informed of the potential danger. If I get hurt, it doesn't come back on the coach or the club. And then I would bring him in there and I would coach him up on it. I'd bring him in on off times when the other players weren't in. And we did this all summer. He snatched, he cleaned, we did box jumps, all the stuff he did at Oklahoma. Okay? We go out and we play Miami, our first preseason game. Remember now, he's a high rep guy. Okay? Miami comes out on the plus 30. They come out with the two back set. They send the tight end in motion to his side. He's standing there. I don't know the defensive scheme that was called. Okay? All I know is he didn't know his role. He didn't know his read. Now, in his mind, he's explosive. He's done all those things in the weight room. But all I got is film of him standing flat-footed and get blown out by the pulling guard. My first training camp, I'm sitting in Mankato, Minnesota. I was with the Minnesota Vikings. I'm sitting with Tim Irwin, who was a 10-time Pro Bowl tackle. And he's kind of in the twilight of his career. How many have heard the name Corey Stringer? Corey Stringer's rookie year. And we're kind of watching these young studs come in, and they're registering and stuff like that at the training camp and stuff like that. All these guys coming in, and I say to Big I said, Tim, how are you going to make this team? All these guys are bigger than you. I know they're stronger than you, probably faster than you. How are you going to make this team? You know what he said? He said, I'm smarter than every one of them. And he said, by being smarter than them, that gives me 2 steps. It does, too. He went on to talk about how Richard Dent was a defensive end for Chicago at that time. He said, just by my experience with playing him, just by the way he lines up, I know whether Dent is going to bull rush me, take an inside charge or an outside charge. That gives me 2 steps. Those young kids, they don't know that. And he's right, isn't it? What makes a difference on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? It has nothing to do with how many power cleans you did in the weight room. Is are they strong? Do they know how to apply that strength in their skill? Are they smart? Do they know what's going on? Those are the rate limiting factors of performance. And that's what we need to train. Okay? I want to say 4 years ago, anybody from Ocala? High school coach from Ocala called me up and said, hey, listen, I was wondering if I could come over and talk about team speed, because we have got to improve team speed if we're going to turn this thing around. And I said, well, I'll be happy to do that, Coach, but I want you to do me a favor. Bring me your offensive and defensive playbooks. He says, what? What are you talking about, offensive, defensive playbooks? I said, just humor me. Just bring them along and everything like that. So he came over to the stadium, and no kidding, I said, can I see your offensive playbook? It was this thick. High school team, this thick. Defensive playbook was just as thick. I said, Coach, if you want to increase your team's speed, you simplify, simplify, simplify. Go from here to here, and I guarantee they're going to play faster. Because if they're standing there flat-footed thinking this, they're not going to be able to play fast. Okay? That was a high school team. That was bigger than the offensive manual that we had with the Jaguars. Are they strong? Are they skilled? Do they know what they're doing? Okay? Okay, now invariably, what you're going to see with people that talk against anti-ballistic training, invariably they're going to be talking about stuff like this. Wayne Westcott. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says, which are likely to produce training injuries. Dr. Ken Leisner, is an accident waiting to happen. Now, what the heck are these guys talking about? And this is the slide that I would show these players. Let's take a look at what's going on functionally with the anatomy. Okay, we've got muscle connected to bone by way of tendon. Bones are connected to bone by way of ligament. Have I lost anybody yet? Okay. Well, when a muscle contracts, how many times have you seen this, Ronnie? When a muscle contracts, it gets shorter. That's why your muscle, when I ask you to flex your bicep, it bulges. Okay, it gets shorter. Okay. Well, my next question is, what direction are the tendons going to be drawn in with muscle contraction? They're going to be drawn in the direction of the contraction, aren't they? Okay. Now, gravity is acting on this, isn't it? This is connected to the skeleton here, which is holding that. So now we have, anybody know what this is called? This is called shearing forces. Shearing forces is what gets your players hurt on the field. I got news for you. It's what gets people hurt in the weight room too. Shearing forces, by definition, is something being torn in two different directions. You're shearing it. Now let's say that this guy is a guy doing a barbell curl. Okay? There are shearing forces occurring at the proximal end of the tendon as well. Why is that? Well, think about this. In doing a barbell curl, are you with me? If my glutes and lower lumbars weren't contracting to stabilize my trunk in an upright position, if they weren't, I would fall forward doing that lift, correct? But because of that pull, that stabilization, the body's being pulled that way. So we've got shearing forces at both ends of the tendons, and we also got shearing forces going on at the ligamentous level. See that? Okay, what's the practical point you take away from this? Listen to me. Whether you lift weights slow or whether you lift weights fast, you are going to create shearing forces. But you increase the speed of movement and you increase the amplitude of the shearing force, don't you? You increase the weight, you increase shearing forces. Do you want to increase shearing forces in sport or in the weight room? No. Because you increase shearing forces, you increase that kid's chance of getting hurt. Okay? Now, I was speaking at a football clinic in Texas one time. A gentleman was sitting in the front and had a big chaw and raises his hand and he says, "Boy, I've been training my boys for 30 years doing what you're talking about. You're telling me not to do it?" And I'll tell you this. We didn't have one injury in the weight room. And he says, "You know what? We won 3 state championships. You're telling me to stop it?" "Well, I don't know about you, but I ain't going to fix what ain't broke." That's what he told me. You know what I told him? I said, "You're not understanding. First of all, I'm going to tell you this, with all due respect, you're lying to me. You're lying. Because if you've been doing ballistic training with 14, 15, 16-year-old kids for 30 years, and you're looking me eyeball to eyeball and saying you haven't had an injury, I know you've had injuries. You're lying. The second thing is, you won those 3 state championships, listen to me, not because of what you did in the weight room, but in spite of what you did in the weight room. Okay? What you're not seeing is this. There are laws of physics that we can't ignore. And the third law says this: for every action there is an opposite and equal. You increase speed of movement, you increase shearing forces. That's the opposite reaction. You increase weight, you increase shearing forces. There's no way of getting around that. What you're not seeing is this, is over time, if I was to dissect somebody's tendon or ligament that goes through ballistic training on a continuous basis, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see accumulated tearing along the tendon or you're going to see cumulative tearing. Now stay with me on this. The tear from the shear may be not enough to cause acute injury right at that time in the weight room. But now you take tendons and ligaments that have undergone this type of stress and you put it out on a football field with a helmet and pads on, where you are going to get shearing forces, where you're going to see the injuries. What you did in the weight room predisposed you to what happened out on the field. Okay? I would tell our players this is a career killer. You see, in pro ball, the goal for players is to get to the next contract, isn't it? And the next contract, and the next contract. And I got news for you. You're not going to be there if you're sitting on the bench if you're an injury guy. Bud Grant once said, a player's biggest ability is what? His durability. Okay? Dr. Davies in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, and yes, this was back in 1980, but the study still applies. What he took a look at in his research was he wanted to find out the most dangerous sport in the world. Okay? And obviously he had to do some statistical analysis because obviously there's only 5 guys on the court for basketball and there's 11 guys on the court. So he did all that and he found out that weight lifting accounts for proportionally more injuries than any other sport. Weightlifting. You know what number 2 was? Anybody want to take a guess? What was number 2?
Cheerleading.
Cheerleading. A lot of people say that. I'm stunned by that. But you know what it was? Powerlifting. Powerlifting. Why? Because of the heavy weights. Heavy weights. There's going to be a lot of shearing forces. You know what number 3 was? American football. I'm going to have to look up the list again. I want to see where cheerleading was. In fact, I don't think they probably even did it because I don't think he considered it a sport. But think about this. If you got Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, and football, think about if you can combine those. Think about if you train a football player like an Olympic weightlifter. Think about it if you train a football player like a powerlifter. To me, that's like throwing match on fire on gas. There's going to be fire, isn't there? Now, there's something in exercise science that it's good to understand the relationship of load versus speed of movement, the force-velocity relationship. And it's a real simple concept. That is, that if the load is light, the speed, you can move it faster. Then as the load gets heavier, you can't move it quite as fast. Right? But this is what people don't understand. They don't understand that as you increase load and as you increase speed, you also increase orthopedic stress. Why was Olympic weightlifting the most dangerous sport in the world? Because of the high speed. Why was powerlifting second? Because of the high load. Okay? As health practitioners, as coaches, we owe it to our players to do everything to, listen to me, enhance their health and not endanger their health. Okay? Now, what I had on this particular tape is either national or world champions doing either a power clean or a snatch or something like this and losing it. Okay, in some way, shape, or form. How many saw the one at the Olympics this year? I think the guy was from Turkey. He, it was broadcast for 3 days over ESPN. It was 24/7. You can hardly miss it. But the reason why I wanted to show these international champions and national champions doing this particular lift is because they are the best in the world at it. The best in the world. And they have problems with it. So if the best in the world have problems doing a very technical lift, if you go to the USA weightlifting certification, There are 31 coaching points to doing that lift correctly and safely. If you don't do all 31 correctly, there's a chance you're going to get hurt. Well, I got news for you. The ding-dongs I've trained the last 14 years, if I have more than 2 coaching points on that exercise, I lose them. 31 coaching points to do that safely. Okay? 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. Arthur Jones once said, most people have opinions on the subject of exercise, many of which opinions are wrong, some of which are counterproductive, and quite a few that are dangerous. My question with this is this. Doing these types of things, when somebody's hurt doing it, who's to blame? Who do you blame when somebody gets hurt doing ballistic training? Well, in my 25 years, this is what I've seen. It wasn't the lift. It wasn't the lift. Kid screwed up. Kid screwed up. That's how it goes down. Lift isn't dangerous. So not only does the kid hurt, he gets ostracized by having the finger pointed at him. You did it wrong. Okay, I got news for you. That lift is a very technical lift. And if the best in the world have trouble doing it, believe me, you are. And then a lot of people say, well, the reason why they got hurt is because he was a real good Olympic weightlifting coach. Well, it's a very highly technical lift. Now, am I saying powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting aren't good sports? No, hear me. I like those sports. I like to catch a powerlifting meet every now and then. I like to watch Olympic weightlifting. But just like any other sport, the participants accept that in doing that sport, there may be a risk of injury. Just like when our football players step on the field, they assume risk of injury, right? My question to you is, should you assume risk of injury in training for sport? Think about that. Do you assume risk of injury in training for sport? I don't think so. Let me drive it home even more. There's no 4 people more in the world that I love more than these 4 up there. And I would say this to you. When you're prescribing exercise, don't prescribe exercise to someone else's kids that you wouldn't prescribe for your own kid. Okay? Because they are somebody else's son or daughter. Knowing what you know. Practical application here is keep it safe and keep it simple. Now, another thing I think that makes up a prudent strength training program is supervision. It starts here. You know, we always tell our athletes, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Well, as coaches, you know what? That's the same reality. If it's going to be, and it all starts right here with proper and qualified supervision, especially when they're young. Arthur Jones again said one time, the two most important factors in exercise may well be individual potential and look at quality of coaching. Check out this. In 1985, when I was coaching at Ohio State, we were having a problem with in-season weightlifting compliance. And we went out, we took a look at what was going around the country, and we stole Penn State's manual resistance in-season program from them. We liked what we saw because usually what happens after practice? We say, okay, we got after practice lifting. First of all, what happens to intensity once they leave the field? Okay, they're taking off their pads, they're goofing around, they're doing all that stuff that they do. By the time they get in the weight room, hey, what's the attitude? Hey, practice is over. You know, I'm done for the day. Okay? So because they're putting in sub-maximal effort, we're getting sub-maximal results. We like this. We like this because you know what? This was part of practice. They didn't even have to take their pads off. They took their helmets off. And right on the field, with the coaching staff there, we took them, of course we had to teach the kids how to do it and everything like that. And part of our in-season program was manual resistance. It was the second workout of the week. Okay? We'd bring them in Sunday too, like Matt was talking about. We'd bring them in Sunday and we would spot them through individual workouts that way. But on Wednesday, this is what they did. Okay? And we took them through a manual resistance program. Well, one thing you have to know about the state of Ohio, all the high schools in the state of Ohio, believe me, they know what's going on at Ohio State. And in 1985, we had a pretty successful season, went to the Rose Bowl, lost by 3 points, but that's another story. But we had a good year. So a lot of the high schools were saying, bringing up at the coaches clinic, they're saying, hey, what's that new in-season thing you were doing? So what we did is, because obviously we want to keep our high school coaches happy, we sent out our manual resistance program to every school in the state of Ohio. And the next year at the clinic, this was the response I got. 50% of the coaches said, oh, it's a great program. We got a lot out of it. 50% of the coaches said, it's garbage. It's garbage. Okay? I knew why it was garbage. What do you think? What was going on at the garbage schools? We're talking about supervision. I show up at Cincinnati Princeton because I went out. I wanted to see what was going on. I knew what I was going to see. But this is what I saw. They hold practice. Head coach after practice brings them all together, talks about the practice, talks about some different things, gives them their announcements. And then he turns to the captain and he says, take him through that manual resistance stuff. And then he and his staff left the field. I found them later. They were smoking cigarettes and watching game film. When they left the field, what was the message they were giving those kids? Certainly, it's not important. It's not important. What do you think the kids' level of effort was, and what do you think they did with it? It was a sham. They were doing nothing. Okay? The reason why we like this is because, and the point is, strength training starts with supervision. You can't supervise like this. Be the type of practitioner, because I see this all too often at the high school level, where the coach will say to the kid, hey, make sure you get your lift in. Be the type of practitioner that says, you know what, I'll meet you there at 2:30. Okay? Because in the end, you don't want a coach like that. Because the schools where it was working, the kids are circled up, the coaches are involved, they're coaching, they get their hands out of their pockets, they roll up the sleeves, they bring the energy and enthusiasm. This is important, this is part of practice, let's get it done. Okay? Because in the end, you are always going to get more out of what you're not going to get what you expect, you're going to get more out of what you inspect than what you expect. Strength training, without question, starts with good supervision, especially at the younger levels. Do you know that most of the weight injuries that are occurring down in the nation is kids down in their basement holding bench press contests? Okay? Younger kids have to be taught. They have to be supervised. Total body training. Ronnie talked about this. Matt talked about this. It's absolutely essential that you're training the total body. This picture is a Martin Gramatica, 1999. Many of you know that we drafted him in the 3rd round. Think about this now. A kicker being drafted 3rd round. He better be pretty doggone good. Give up a 3rd round pick for this kid. Okay? Well, a lot of kickers in football are treated like, the other guys. The strength coach a lot of times will say, okay, listen, you go do whatever you do. I'm going to work with the real players. Okay? That's how it was for Marty at Kansas State. But when we drafted him, he got a letter from me saying, expect when you come here in the off-season program, you're going to be in a structured strength training program. Okay? Well, he shows up his first day at one buck and he says, because at Kansas State he did nothing. I'm a kicker, so all I'm doing is training my lower body. And I said, well, you are. You're training your lower body. Okay, come with me. And I took him out on the field, and I took 2 ropes. And I tied his arms around here, and then I tied him around the wrist, so he's like this. And I teed up a ball 10 yards in front of him, and I said, okay, Marty, kick it as far as you can. Well, obviously, he couldn't do that. What was my point? If you want to improve performance, whether it's kicking a ball, throwing a ball, catching a ball, making a tackle, it's going to be the sum of all the muscles coordinated working together. You will use every muscle in the body to do that. You want to increase performance, you got to train every muscle in the body if you want to increase performance. Athletic skills are the result of synchronized muscular action acting around all the joints of the body. Okay? The other reason you need to train total body is, Matt, can I use your elbow?
Sure.
His elbow is only as strong as the muscles that surround it. You increase the strength of the muscles surrounding his elbow, you increase the structural integrity of the elbow. Okay? Well, I got news for you too. When a football player steps between the white lines, every joint's going to be exposed to injury, isn't it? So if we're talking preventing injuries, or I liked what I heard this morning, somebody talk about limiting injuries. If you're going to limit injuries, you better train all the muscles around all the joints. We've heard a lot said about sports specificity. A lot of the questions I get when I go and speak at clinics is, how do you distinguish an offensive lineman's program from a wide receiver's program? The program's the same. He's going to use his total body. He's going to use his total body. So we're going to train total body. The difference is he's going to lift a whole lot more weight, isn't he? Okay? What's the ultimate lift for football? Coaches, what's the ultimate? Head coach comes in and says, you got one lift and one lift only that you can do in the weight room. We don't have time. We don't have time for anything, but one lift. What is it going to be? My most common answers are clean, squat, bench. Those are the ones I get. And then I show them this. And you're not going to be able to see it, unfortunately, but what you would see is, and when I click this on, is you're going to see Dr. Joseph Torg from the University of Pennsylvania put together all these cervical spine injuries that resulted in quadriplegia from football hits from 1997 to 2007, high school, college, and pro. And you'd be able to see some of these hits if I was thinking and did that today, but you're not going to be able to. A lot of people would think that it would be real grotesque. A hit resulting in quadriplegia, it would just be like watching one of those car injury type of movies. I got news for you, it's not. It's not. It looks like any other hit. Coaches always talk about see what you hit, because if your head is up, you have a natural lordosis in your neck, a natural curvature that can take some torque. But once you drop your chin to your chest, you make what's called a segmented column. It's kind of like a cocktail straw. Okay? And if the body's going this way and you hit something here, it's called axial loading. This way, the neck is in the middle. Think about that cocktail straw. Okay? Once you've made a segmented column, and that's what happened in every one of these cases. Okay? Something we don't like to talk about, is it? When I talk about the ultimate lift for football, immediately people think about performance. What's going to increase performance? If you're quadriplegic, you're not going to be performing real well. And one thing I always told our players, on my watch, we are going to make sure that we train that neck. We're going to train that neck. Okay? We're going to protect the neck. What makes a productive program. For it to be productive, you have to overload muscles. Now, let's take a look. A lot of people throw the term out, muscle overload. Let's actually take a look at what muscle overload is. If I was to dissect Matt's bicipital tendon here and here, pull out his muscle, cut it in half, and show it to you, this is what you'd see. It's a bisectional view of muscle. The large fibers are fast twitch fibers. The smaller diameter fibers are slow twitch fibers. You have three potential levels of strength. The first level is called absolute strength. And let me give you an example of absolute strength potential. I think it was in 1985, there was a 105-pound woman up in Toledo, Ohio. She's out gardening, okay? They had a 1976 Oldsmobile that was parked on an incline. Somehow the brake disengages, the car rolls down, and it ends up over a 6-year-old, over his arm, the back tire. He's kicking and screaming and flailing, and witnesses say that when she rolled the car, it rolled twice. That would be a demonstration of absolute strength potential. You've all heard stories like that, right? Okay. You're going to only see demonstrations of absolute strength potential in life and death situations. Okay? In fact, I'll tell you this. If I could electrically stimulate all your muscles to contract at maximal tension in the same instant, you would produce so much force that you would shatter every bone in your body. In fact, when she rolled that car, she broke her back doing that. Okay? The weight room isn't a life and death situation, is it? It's a non-life and death situation. So in the weight room, what you're going to see is this. The body basically says, okay, listen, I'm going to allow you to use this much capacity of a muscle. But I'm going to leave that much on reserve in case I do get in a life and death situation. Our bodies are based on survival, aren't they? So in a very crude way, that's where the muscle's at when you come into the weight room. Now let's start doing a curl. Okay, let's take this guy through a set. We all know that muscle's very efficient. It's only going to recruit the muscle fibers that are necessary to do the movement, the exercise. Okay? What's being recruited first here? Just a caveat to this. What's being recruited first? Slow twitch fibers. Okay? This is an old slide Aaron actually made up a long time ago. And it shows the progression of how muscle fibers are recruited. Rep 1. 2, you're into the slow twitch fibers. Then you move into the intermediate fibers, then the fast twitch fibers as you start to fatigue. First fibers that will be recruited, regardless of speed of movement, are slow twitch fibers. Okay? Why is that? Well, because recruitment is based on need and not speed. If you want to look this up, this is Henneman's principle of muscle fiber recruitment. This is Physiology 101. Why do I say that? Because there's a lot of people out there that says that if you lift fast, if you throw things in the weight room, you will selectively recruit fast twitch fibers. I got news for you. That's not physiologically possible. That's physiologically impossible. Okay? Look it up. Henneman's muscle fiber recruitment. Okay. As you continue to go through the set and you put tension on the muscle, more and more fibers are getting recruited. Now we're getting close to this threshold that the body doesn't want you to cross. How many of you, when you've been lifting weights, start to experience discomfort in the muscle? Burning, pain, right? What's the body telling you at that point? Shut down. I don't want you to cross that line. With that understanding, what is overload? Overload is, with your effort, you tell the body, no, I'm going. I'm going. No pain, no gain. You've got to teach them the difference between exertional discomfort and injury associated with pain. No pain, no gain, no brain. If something hurts, if something has that shearing, you got to shut the exercise down. But you don't shut it down because they're feeling a little exertional discomfort. You work hard through that, and you force the body to use fibers that it doesn't want to recruit through your effort. And now what have you done? Now you have physiologically set off bells and whistles in the body. You have threatened the very survival of this tissue. So you know what it's got to do? If you give it the proper rest, if you give it the proper nutrition, it's going to adapt to that. So when we're talking about muscle overload, this is what we're talking about. You have to work hard. But you can't work too hard. Okay? A lot of people say, you know what? If I cross that threshold once, wouldn't it be better if I cross it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times? No. No. Understand the physiological effect. You cross it and you cause a physiological adaptation. Okay? Just like when a woman gets pregnant, can you make her more pregnant? No. No. Understand. Hey, with our understanding of overload, does it matter if you use 1 set, 2 set, 3 set, 4 set? Doesn't matter. Just that you overload. Does it matter whether you use free weights, machines, manual resistance, 50-pound bags of rocks? It doesn't matter. What matters in strength training is that it's productive and you overload it. A great study here, and I'm under time limitations right now, but basically this was taken out of Fleck Kramer's book called Designing Resistance Training Programs. And what they did is they looked at all the different types of commonly prescribed protocols. There's 4x4s, 5x5s, single sets in there, pyramid schemes in there. And what they did is they took a look at lean body mass changes. And they wanted to determine which of these protocols is best. And they used men and women and free weights and isokinetic equipment and machines. And they used all these different types. Hey, you go up and down that scale, there is not one protocol more significantly significant than another one. Not one. So what does that tell you? With our knowledge of overload, free weights are machines. It's not the tool. We've been talking about it all day, haven't we? It's how you use the tool. Research says that everything works if you work, and if you do it intensely, and if you do it intelligently. So, some guys come in, Ronnie's talking about 5-3-1, and Matt talked about his program, and Coach Kaz's program and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into, you got to do 3 sets, you got to do 4 sets, we do 6 sets. You know what? It don't matter, because research says everything works. If you can get your kids to work. Okay? Everything works. If you do it hard and if you do it intelligently. If you don't overtrain them. More is not better. Dr. Carpinelli said there is little scientific evidence and no physiological basis to suggest that a greater volume of exercise elicits greater increases in strength or hypertrophy. Okay? So more is not better. Being smart in allowing the body to rest and recover is better. The practical application, the intensity of the effort, not the volume of work, is the most important determinant of results. Practical. I just got one quick story here, and we'll cover practical. Practical just simply means, is it efficient? Is your program real? Okay? In 1986, I was 96, I was with the Minnesota Vikings, and in our bye week, I called Boyd Epley down in Nebraska, and I asked Boyd if during the bye week I could come down. I'm a young guy, I want to understand strength training and stuff like that. I want to see how he does his in-season program. And he said, yeah, absolutely, come on down. And what I did is, he had sent me his manual, beautiful manual, colored pictures in there, computer graphic sheets, You know, and it had their workouts in there, their in-season workouts. The week before I went down, I did the offensive lineman workout, the way that it was in the manual. There were 52 sets in that workout. It took me, and I gave him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't take much time between sets. I was cruising. It took me 2 hours and 40 minutes to do that workout. 52 sets. Okay? Well, I went down there, and this is what I saw. Because I show, you know, hey, price of the pudding is when you show up, right? First time on Monday, the players were going into lift, the offensive linemen. Of course, I watched them come off the practice field, same old stuff. They're goofing around, doing all their deals. Finally, they make it down to the weight room, and Boyd had his army of assistants out there on the bench press, because the bench press was the first exercise they were going to do. They get on, you know how it is, those of you that have been in the weight room after practice, they're getting their warm-up sets, and they're screwing around, getting water, walking around. Well, they finally get to their work sets, and they did 3 work sets. By the time their 3rd work set is done, we've gone through 45, 42 minutes for just the bench. Okay, what I started to see then is guys start filtering out the door. Okay? The overachievers were over in the corner doing some curls. Okay? The last guy left at an hour. And I followed him out the door, and I had the thing that I had torn out of the manual. And I showed it to the kid, and I said, "Don't you do this?" He says, "Man," he says, "are you crazy?" He says, "After this, I got to go to training table, then I got to go to study table. I don't have time to do all that." Do you know that I knew high school programs in Minnesota that were doing Nebraska's program better than Nebraska? Because they were making the kids do it. So a lot of times, what you see on a computer sheet isn't necessarily when the rubber hits the road or what's getting done. What am I saying to you? When you design exercise and protocol, whether it's in season or off season, it's got to be practical, doesn't it? You got to do it. Don't ask how much do I have to do to be my best. I think the better question is, what's the least amount that you have to do? You know, everybody's into this. How much do I have to do to be my best? Ask them, what's the least amount that you have to do to be practical? When in doubt, always do less than more. Last is purposeful, and we talked about this. The purpose is not to demonstrate strength. The purpose of a strength training program is to develop strength. And one thing I'd like you to do is, this is a demonstration of strength. My thing is, if you have these types of things up on your walls, I take them down. Specifically 1 rep max things. Why? We put them up there for what? Motivation, right? Well, I think what ends up happening is you reward weight over effort with this thing. It recognizes those that are predisposed to doing this type of stuff. It overemphasizes certain exercises. Do you ever see neck listed on those boards? If you don't put neck up there, what's the message? It's not important. What you test, you're giving them a message. And then a wrist injury. The only guy I ever trained in my life that could stand straight up, bring his arm down, and cup his kneecap was Brad Sellers. He could, at Ohio State, basketball player, center, could stand straight up and cup his kneecap. I mean, he had orangutan arms. Okay? Now, the thing you had to understand about Brad is he's a great kid, but he was fiercely competitive. You ever been around those guys? I mean, it didn't matter if it was on the court or you're playing cards in the locker room, he had to win. He was just driven. Well, what do you think his attitude was when he went in the weight room? Okay, do you want long arms or short arms in the weight room? Short. Do you want long arms or short arms out on the basketball court? Long arms. Okay? Well, he would go in there and he would compete against all these other guys. But what we had to do with Brad is we had to educate this guy, because if we were going to get to the NCAA tournament, he was going to take us there. His body was going to have to get prepared for the Big Ten season, because I got news for you. He's going to get pounded in the paint. Okay, so we needed him in the weight room getting stronger. But he didn't like to go in the weight room because he lost every time in his mind. And I think you need to educate kids to this all the time. Who do you compete against in the weight room?
Yourself.
Write down what you do on a workout, and that's what we told Brad. You got to get better than your last workout. You got to compete against what you did last time. And then you start training like a banshee. And I wish I could say we won the national championship that year. We didn't. We didn't. We made it to the NIT. But Brad didn't miss a game. Okay? The purpose is to develop strength, not demonstrate strength. What you want, a lot of times in season, this is the scenario. Beginning of the season, end of the season, skill level goes up, strength training is kind of pushed to the back burner, strength levels go down. As strength levels go down, what's going to happen to your chance of your kids getting hurt? It's going to go up. What you want to do is you want to make sure that this is the scenario you're looking for. As skill levels going up, strength. Ronnie talked about it and Matt talked about it. During in season, you want to make sure that those kids are taken care of. It's an emphasis of the program. Okay? Player friendly, and I'll stop right here. In the NFL, our players lived all over the country. And they, for the most part, did not have a high training IQ. Okay? They're uneducated. And they weren't supposed to be educated. Okay? But they would go in different gyms and they would look around to what was going on. Basu balls, physio balls, cross training, all this type of stuff. And if it was new to them, if it was new, in their minds a lot of times it was better. It was better. So they would come back to me and we wouldn't be doing those things. And if I wasn't familiar what was going around, I would lose them because their perception of me would be, he's old school. He don't know what's going on. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to make sure that I was in those gyms and see what was going on because I would have to, listen to this, deceive to achieve. We did very little physio ball work, but you can believe we had like 100 physio balls in my room. Because if that what the perception was, if I didn't have that, I didn't know what I was doing. Okay? We always drew the line at where we didn't do guru-ish things if it was dangerous, but we would throw whatever guru thing we could do as window dressing in to appease the mentality. Okay? And you got to realize that too. You're at the high school level. You know what they're doing at Velocity? They're doing this. Well, we don't do that here. Well, the coach doesn't know what's going on. So you got to know what's going on. Okay? Again, not real hard to understand, but all hard to do. So strength training, to wrap it all up, you got to get people stronger. But when you get people stronger, this is what you use. You do it in a prudent way, a productive way, practical way, purposeful way, and something that the players can understand. I, too, appreciate you listening for this long and coming out on a Saturday afternoon.